Hello, welcome. My name is Jamie Franklin. I'm the curator at the Bennington Museum. And today we're bringing you our very first chat with Jamie. During this time of COVID-related closure, we thought we would present some video chats with me between various artists. And today, in our very first video chat, we're going to be speaking with Bennington-based artist J Blackwell. Jay would have been having an exhibition opening at the Bennington Museum, Never Uses Beyonder, this coming week on May 16th. So we thought we would take this opportunity to talk to them about their work and what they've been working on during this time of self-isolation. So welcome, Jay. Hello, Jay. How are you?
Hello, Jamie. I'm very well. Thank
Good,
you.
good. Excellent. Well, it's nice to see your face. Nice to see what you've been working on behind you, which we will get to in just a minute. But before we dive too deeply into the work, I just wanted to say congratulations. You were recently named as a Guggenheim Fellow, and I know that's a huge deal as an artist and in the humanities, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so just a little bit of background. I believe I met you in 2015. Is that around the time that you came to Bennington?
So I have a kind of a long history with Bennington.
Yes.
I'm an alumni of the college, and I went there in the early 1990s. And then I returned to the college in 2009 to teach painting and drawing. So I've been teaching at the college since 2009. I became a full-time faculty member in 2016.
I believe in 2015 when we met, you were bringing a class to look at our Grandma Moses paintings. And I immediately kind of saw an affinity between us in terms of our interests and kind of things that were kind of on the edge of the art world, so to speak. And I believe it was also at that time that you gave me a small little artist booklet called Plastic Bag as Humble Present. It shows some images of some of your early never uses. When did you start making never uses? And in your own words, can you kind of describe them for us?
Sure. So I lived in New York City for a very long time, and one of the facts of life about living in New York City are litter. And things on the street, including things like plastic bags, which became interesting to me, both as kind of a symbol of the sort of urban landscape, but also as a way to think about consumerism and consumption more broadly. And the way that we think about these plastic bags is often dominated by the way that they promote consumption. And at the same time, they're also an object which we have very mixed feelings about because they're also litter. So the way the title Never Uses came about was sort of thinking about this impossible opposition, right? It's an object that we, on the one hand, have deeply embedded into our economic and cultural systems. And on the other hand, we feel incredibly conflicted about its purpose and value.
And so around the time that we met and I became familiar with your work, you may remember the image that I showed on the cover of the book. They tended to be a less densely embroidered and decorated. But here we see a piece called Rice Lane. And it's kind of, you can see the remnants of the handle, so you can as a viewer make out the idea of the single-use plastic bag, but then you've kind of boldly embellished it with these multicolored yarns. So can you kind of talk about maybe the evolution, both in your thinking and in terms of the physical and aesthetic qualities of the objects?
Sure. So in the same way that like litter accumulates, and sort of becomes an increasing kind of presence over time. I like to think about my working method as also being cumulative. So I embroider the bags with different kinds of yarn: wool, silk, acrylic, both kind of fibers that would be more specialized and more, I would say, expensive, as well as yarns that you could find in more, I would say, widespread kind of availability. And I'm really interested in sort of literally kind of weaving a surface that exists on top of, or perhaps is a substitute to, the plastic bag itself. So initially the idea was that I would simply stitch the bags shut, making them non-functional or dysfunctional. And then, like I said, over time, those kind of decisions began to accumulate, and I kept stitching on the bags. And that turned into this more dense kind of arrangement where the kind of aesthetic choices in terms of color and composition play a really important role in the way the final object emerges.
This is the work that I was familiar with when I first got to know you and was first kind of encountering your work. And then I think it was about a year ago that you invited me to your studio here in Bennington to share with me some new ideas that you had. And it was kind of the impetus behind the current exhibition and installation that would have been happening this coming week. So why don't we take a look at that next image? And as I was thinking about this conversation, and I went back to this book, Plastic Bag as Humble Artist, I noticed, you were really letting the bags speak more for themselves back then in a way. And in a way, we're kind of coming back to that with this new work. Why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of background on your thought behind this new work and kind of that evolution?
Sure. So as I said, I became a full-time employee at Bennington College in 2016, and that meant that I also relocated to Bennington. I live here full-time now. And part of understanding and becoming a part of the community means that I shop where everyone else shops, at our local markets. And that then led me to start thinking about what my kind of patterns of consumption were. In a place like Bennington, where I make a weekly trip to the grocery store and have this kind of weekly gathering of these objects, it seemed like an interesting opportunity to both understand what an individual's consumption might look like over a span of time, and that again, the accumulation of these objects seemed to be a really good way to sort of think about how much is involved, both in packaging as well as how much is involved in, how much excess material is involved in, say, food or in shopping more broadly. And then, as you said, I'm interested in making it clear that the plastic is still very visible here. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the kind of relationship between the plastic and the yarn is here in terms of how much to add. That's a question I'm still kind of exploring. But nevertheless, the scale of this project is really important in understanding how habits over time really do reveal larger issues in the world.
One of the reasons that you contacted me is because you were aware that Vermont State would be instituting its single-use plastic ban, which was one of the most kind of expansive plastic bans in the country, coming up on July 1st. Why don't we just wrap up our discussion, kind of you just talking about your interest in this idea of plastic ban and why we wanted to do this exhibition at this moment, and kind of how you're feeling in the studio right now. So why don't we kind of come back to us just having a chat as we kind of end our conversation about those larger issues about pollution, plastic bags, single-use plastic bans, and our kind of current moment in the world in terms of COVID and all of those things.
Sure. Initially, I really wanted this project to be a collaboration in the sense that in attempting something at this scale, I would be drawing upon both the community and my students and other colleagues to put this together. The virus situation, the pandemic, has obviously precluded that possibility. And so I would just say that one thing that's become really remarkable to me is in sort of having to carry this project through on my own, which was not at all the plan. It's both, I would say, a kind of hard confrontation with the kinds of waste that I generate, which is a really interesting thing to confront in this moment, even as it's also true that I think I'm not alone. I'm also consuming a lot less during this crisis than I would normally. And that's also been really interesting to me to think about. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this show happening because I really do want the work to be shared with the world. And I understand that the current situation with the plastic bag ban is, I would say, unclear maybe at the moment. But I think that the point still holds regardless, because we will continue to have to grapple with these questions about packaging and consumption and our own behaviors going forward.
That's great. And do you mind, as we end our conversation, there was a single quote in the back of the booklet that you gave me that I mentioned earlier, by the writer Robert Walser from his novel The Walk in 1917, that I found capturing a certain aspect that kind of feels poignant at this moment. So I'm just going to read that and maybe say thank you, and say maybe we can just kind of depart and contemplate how this quote kind of relates to our current moment. So it says, "But the wonderful image of the humble present became a feeling which overpowered all others. The future paled and the past dissolved. I glowed and flowered myself in the glowing, flowering present." Mm-hmm. And that idea of just being in the present when what we could have never imagined we would be here even 3 months ago, and we have no idea what will be happening in 3 months. Mm-hmm. Let's just kind of all be present in the moment and see what happens. So great talking to you, and thank you, Jay. And hopefully we will be able to share this work with the world soon.
Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thank you.